I was sitting in a plastic chair that was too hard for my old bones, under fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry insects, in a hospital emergency room that smelled like antiseptic and fear. My name is Gerald Raymond Hutchins. I am 62 years old. I worked 37 years as a mail carrier for the United States Postal Service. I walked routes in summer heat and winter blizzards. I never called in sick, not once, not even the day my father died, because we needed the money and I had a family to feed. I am not a dramatic man. I am not the kind of man who makes speeches or cries in public. I fix things. I show up. I stay quiet when other men would yell. That is who I am. That is who I have always been. But that night, in that emergency room, everything I had built over 2 years of quiet, steady living, cracked open like dry earth after a long drought. My son, Marcus, was lying on a hospital bed behind a curtain, hooked to machines I didn't understand, with tubes in his arm and a doctor speaking words that moved too fast for my tired mind to catch. Marcus was 34 years old. He had collapsed at work at the auto body shop where he'd worked for 11 years, and his co-worker, a young man named Darius, had called 911 and then called me. I had driven 40 minutes through rush hour traffic, hands tight on the wheel, praying every prayer I knew. And I was there, right there, holding my boy's hand through a gap in the curtain while the nurse checked his vitals. That's when my phone buzzed. I almost didn't look at it. I thought it might be my sister Dorothy calling to check in. Or maybe Marcus's boss. I pulled out my phone with my free hand, squinting at the screen without my reading glasses. It was a text from my wife, Renee. I had been married to Renee for 31 years. I read her message once. Then I read it again. Then I sat very still for a long moment, the way you sit when something hits you so hard that your body forgets how to move. She had written, Gerald, I need you to know I am done. I am moving to Miami with Derek. I have already transferred our savings to my personal account, all $47,000. The house mortgage is in your name. You are on your own. Don't call me. Don't beg. It's over. Derek. I knew who Derek was. He was 51 years old, recently divorced, smelled like cologne you could buy at a gas station, and had been attending our church for the past 2 years. He drove a leased BMW and sold insurance policies. He had a wide smile and soft hands that had never done a hard day's work. And apparently he had my wife and my life savings. I looked at my son, lying pale and still in that hospital bed, monitors beeping softly around him. And I typed back 2 words, good luck. That was all. No crying, no begging, no long message full of questions and hurt feelings. Just good luck. And then I put my phone back in my pocket, and I held my son's hand, and I waited for the doctor to come back. I need to go back. I need you to understand who we were, so you understand what happened. Renee and I met in 1992. She was 28, I was 31. She was beautiful in a way that made you nervous, big dark eyes, a laugh that filled up rooms, a way of walking into a place like she belonged there more than anyone else. We got married in her mother's backyard in August, with paper lanterns hanging from the oak tree, and potato salad that her Aunt Gloria made from scratch. It cost us $800 total, including the dress. We were broke and happy and completely in love. Marcus came along 2 years later. Then our daughter, Simone, 18 months after that. Those early years were hard, really hard. There were months when I counted change from a jar to buy groceries. There were winters when we kept the heat low and wore extra sweaters because the heating bill was too much. Renee and I would stay up late at the kitchen table, going over numbers, figuring out how to stretch things just a little bit further. But we did it together. That was the thing. We did it together. I worked my route every single day. Renee worked time at a pediatric clinic as a medical receptionist. We raised those kids with discipline and love, and Sunday dinners and family vacations to places like Myrtle Beach and the Smoky Mountains, where we stayed in small motels and played card games at night. When Marcus was 17, he got in trouble with some boys from the next neighborhood over nothing criminal, but enough to scare us. I sat him down at that same kitchen table, and I talked to him for 3 hours straight. Not yelling, just talking, man to man, even though he was still a boy. I told him who he was. I told him what his name meant. I told him that a Hutchins man does not take shortcuts and does not abandon the people who need him. He cried. I didn't. I held him, though. I held that boy like he was still the tiny baby they'd put in my arms in the delivery room, and I said, "You are my greatest achievement, son. Don't waste that." He straightened up after that. Graduated, got his certification in automotive technology, married a woman named Keisha, had 2 daughters, my grandbabies Lily and Ava. He wasn't rich, but he was good, he was kind, he was present. Simone had moved to Atlanta 5 years ago. She had a good career in marketing, she called on Sundays, she was doing well, and Renee and I, we had settled into the quiet comfort that long marriages sometimes find. We were not passionate the way we used to be, but I thought we were solid. I thought we were rooted. I thought wrong. Part 3. The signs I ignored. I have to be honest with myself, even now, even looking back. There were signs. About 3 years ago, Renee started going to the gym. Fine, good, even. She started dressing differently, nicer, started coming home later some evenings, saying she was at Bible study or women's group, started sleeping with her phone face down on the nightstand. I noticed. I'm not a blind man, but I told myself the story that comfortable husbands tell themselves. She's just finding herself. Women go through changes. She's happy. We're fine. I didn't ask. I didn't push, because that's not how I was built. I trusted my wife, 30 years of marriage, and I trusted my wife. Then Derek started coming to our church. He was charming in that slick, surface-level way. He shook hands too firmly and held eye contact a beat too long, like he'd read a book about how to make people like you. He always had a joke ready, always had a compliment for the ladies. I didn't like him. I don't know exactly why. Call it old man instinct, but Renee laughed differently around him. Younger, somehow, like she was performing a version of herself from 20 years ago. 6 months before that hospital night, I had found a text on her phone. I wasn't snooping. Her phone had buzzed while she was in the shower, and I had picked it up thinking it might be important, and I saw the preview before I could look away. Last night was everything. I keep thinking about you. It was from Derek. I put the phone back down on the counter. I stood at the kitchen sink for a long time, looking out at our backyard, the garden I had planted 15 years ago, the oak tree we'd hung a tire swing on for Marcus and Simone when they were small, the fence I had repaired board by board over the years, and I said nothing, not to Renee, not to anyone. I just kept going, kept showing up, kept being Gerald Raymond Hutchins, the man who fixes things and doesn't make scenes. Maybe I was foolish. Maybe I was afraid. Maybe some deep part of me still believed that if I just kept being steady, kept being faithful, kept being there, she would come back to me. Choose me again. I was wrong about that too. Marcus had what the doctors called a hypertensive crisis. His blood pressure had spiked to a dangerous level, 210/130. Numbers that made the nurses move quickly and speak in low, urgent voices. He had a history of high blood pressure that he hadn't been managing well. Too much stress, too much fast food, not enough sleep. He was going to be okay. That was the first thing the doctor told me, and I felt something in my chest loosen like a knot being untied. He was going to be okay. They wanted to keep him overnight, run some tests, adjust his medication. I called Keisha, his wife, and she came rushing in with Lily and Ava. and there was crying and hugging, and the kind of chaotic love that fills emergency rooms late at night. I stepped back. Let them have their moment. That's what fathers do. I went and sat in the waiting room, got a coffee from the vending machine that tasted like warm cardboard, sat in that hard plastic chair, and I reread Renee's text. I have already transferred our savings to my personal account, all $47,000. We had saved that money over 15 years, bit by bit, tax returns, birthday money from my late mother, rest her soul, the small inheritance from my Uncle Robert, every extra shift I'd ever worked, every dinner we'd eaten at home instead of going out, every vacation we'd taken to cheap motels instead of resorts, gone in one transfer. She had planned this. You don't transfer $47,000 in an afternoon. This took time. This took thought. She had sat across from me at breakfast and passed me the salt and asked if I wanted more coffee, and all the while she had been planning to take everything we had built together and walk away. The worst part wasn't the money. I want you to understand that. The money hurt, but it wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the timing. She had known Marcus was in the hospital. Keisha had posted something on Facebook, not detailed. Just please pray for my husband, having a health scare. Renee was Facebook friends with Keisha. She had seen it. She had sent me that text anyway. While I was sitting in a hospital praying for my son, my wife chose that moment to tell me she was leaving and taking everything. That tells you everything you need to know. Part 5. The twist. What Renee didn't know here is where I need to tell you something. Something I had never told Renee, not because I was hiding it maliciously, but because I had learned, from a lifetime of watching people, that you don't show all your cards to anyone. Not even your spouse. Especially not your spouse. If that spouse has been quietly planning to leave you. About 14 months before that hospital night, my old supervisor at the Postal Service, a man named Howard Briggs, who had been something of a mentor to me, had passed away. Howard had no children. His wife had died years before him. He had a nephew in Oregon who he was estranged from. What Howard had was a rental property, a small apartment building in a town about 40 minutes away. 4 units, nothing fancy but solid, paid off. Howard had left that property to me. He had told me this privately, 2 years before he died, when his health was failing. We'd sat on his porch and he'd said, "Gerald, you're the most decent man I've ever known. When I go, that building is yours. My lawyer already has the paperwork." I had cried then, quietly in my car afterward, because no one had ever said anything like that to me. I had not told Renee because I had wanted to understand the full situation first. The taxes, the existing tenants, the management. I had been quietly working with Howard's lawyer and a property manager to get things in order. The building was valued at $340,000. It generated roughly $3,200 per month in rental income. I had opened a separate account for the rental income, not to hide it from Renee out of spite. I genuinely intended to tell her once everything was settled and I understood what we had. But I had been moving slowly, carefully, the way I do everything. And now, as I sat in that hospital waiting room with a cold vending machine coffee and my wife's goodbye text on my phone, I realized something quietly profound. She had taken $47,000, and she had left behind a man who now had a paid-off property worth $340,000 and a monthly income she knew nothing about. She thought she was leaving me with nothing. She had, in fact, left herself with nothing. Marcus came home the next afternoon. I drove him myself, Keisha following in their car with the girls. We got him settled on his couch, and Keisha made soup, and Lily drew him a picture that said, "Daddy get betur," with a lopsided heart. Marcus looked at me at one point, when Keisha was in the kitchen and the girls were watching cartoons. "Dad," he said quietly, "where's Mom?" I had debated what to say. I had spent the night in that waiting room chair, and the early morning walking the hospital corridor, thinking about what to say to my son. She had something she needed to do, I said. Marcus looked at me for a long moment. He's always been a perceptive boy. "Dad, what happened?" I sat down next to him on the couch. I showed him the text. He read it. His jaw tightened. His eyes got wet and then went hard, the way men's eyes do when they're trying to decide whether to feel hurt or angry and end up somewhere between both. "She took the savings," he said, very quiet. "Yes, all of it. Yes, while you were sitting with me in the hospital. Yes, son." He handed me the phone back. He stared at the ceiling for a long time. "What are you going to do, Dad?" I looked at my boy, my son who had just spent a night hooked to monitors, who was 30, 4 years old, and still needed me, who had 2 daughters and a wife and a life that was still unfolding. "I'm going to be fine," I said. "That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be fine." He reached over and squeezed my hand, like I used to squeeze his when he was small. I heard things through Simone at first. Simone, my daughter in Atlanta, who had somehow remained neutral in the way that adult children sometimes do when their parents' marriage falls apart, trying to love everyone, trying not to take sides. "Dad," she called me 3 days after Renee left. "I talked to Mom. How is she?" I asked, and I meant it sincerely. Whatever Renee had done, she was the mother of my children. I did not wish her sick. She's in Miami. She's with Derek. She got an apartment. Good. "Dad," she says she's sorry about the timing. With Marcus in the hospital. She said she panicked and just, "Simone," I said gently, "you don't have to defend her to me, and you don't have to defend me to her. We are adults. This is between me and your mother." Simone got quiet. "Then are you okay, Dad? Really? I'm managing," I said. What I did not tell Simone was that the day after Marcus came home from the hospital, I had called Howard's lawyer and the property manager and told them I was ready to take a fully active role. I had tenants, I had income, I had a plan. I also did not tell Simone what I was learning about Derek, because here's what Renee hadn't known about Derek, what none of us had fully known. Because he was a man who smiled wide and spoke loud and let the performance substitute for the substance. Derek did not own that BMW. It was leased, and he was behind on payments. He had declared bankruptcy 4 years ago. He had 2 ex-wives, not 1. The insurance business he ran was barely surviving. He had 3 clients and a lot of credit card debt. He had convinced Renee that he owned a condo in Miami. He rented a 2-bedroom apartment from a man who owned the building. The man who owned the building, as it turned out, was a member of our church who had moved to Florida 6 years ago and still kept in touch with people from the congregation. His name was Brother Thomas, and Brother Thomas had reached out to me about something entirely unrelated to offer his condolences about my marriage when this information had come out in conversation. "Gerald," Brother Thomas had said carefully over the phone, "that man Derek, I don't know how to tell you this, but he's been lying to your wife. He doesn't have what he told her he has." "I know," I said. "She's going to find out. I know that too." I said. It took 6 weeks. 6 weeks for Renee to call me, not text. Call, in the way that people call when they've run out of options and performances, and the truth is sitting right in front of them, impossible to ignore. It was a Tuesday evening. I was sitting on my back porch, my house, mortgage in my name, which I had continued paying without missing a beat, drinking tea, and watching the sun drop behind the oak tree. My phone rang. Gerald. Her voice was different, smaller, like something had been deflated in it. "Renee," I said. "I need to talk to you." "Okay." A long pause. I heard her breathing. He lied to me, she said. About everything. The condo, it's a rental. He's broke, Gerald. He's been broke for years. He's already spent almost $15,000 of the savings I brought on his credit card debt. He told me it was an investment. I said nothing. Gerald, are you there? I'm here. I don't know what to do. I'm in a strange city. I don't know anyone here. The apartment we're in, his name isn't even on the lease. It's some complicated sublet situation. He went to a conference last week, and I found all his bank statements and her voice cracked. Gerald, what did I do? I sat with that question for a moment. The oak tree caught the last light and went from green to amber to something almost gold. You did what you did, Renee. I said. I made a terrible mistake. I know that. I know it, and I'm so ashamed. The timing with Marcus, I know that was wrong. I know that was. Do you need help right now? Immediate help? Are you in danger? No, I'm not in danger. Then we'll talk when you're back in front of me, I said. This kind of conversation should not happen over a phone. Gerald, I don't even know if I have the money to. I'll wire you enough for a plane ticket home, I said. Not from the savings. Don't worry about the savings from my account. Silence. Then you have another account. We'll talk when you're home, Renee. She came home on a Thursday. Marcus drove me to the airport, even though he was supposed to be resting. I told him not to come. He came anyway. That's his mother. We stood in the arrivals area, and I watched the doors, and then she came through. She looked diminished. That's the only word. Renee has always walked like she owns the room. She walked into that airport like she was apologizing for taking up space. She had a suitcase and a carry-on and circles under her eyes and no gold jewelry. She usually wore her gold pieces everywhere. She saw us. She stopped. Marcus went to her first. He hugged her. She held on to him and cried. I watched my son, who had been in the emergency room 2 months ago, who she had sent a goodbye text to his father over, while he lay in that hospital bed, hold his mother while she wept. That is who Marcus is. That is who I raised him to be. Then she came to me. She stood in front of me, and she looked at my face, and I think she was looking for anger, for coldness, for punishment, maybe, because that's what she had been preparing herself for on the plane ride home. She didn't find it. Gerald, she said. Let's go home, I said. We sat at the kitchen table that night, the same table where Renee and I had counted change in the lean years, where I had talked Marcus through his troubles at 17, where 31 years of breakfasts and arguments and reconciliations had happened. I made tea. I put a cup in front of her. I sat across from her. Talk to me, I said, and she did. For 2 hours she talked about how she had felt invisible for years, how she had felt like I was married to my routines more than to her, how Derek had made her feel seen and exciting and young, how she had convinced herself she deserved something more, something different, and that the money, our money, was half hers anyway, so it wasn't really theft, just an early settlement. I listened. I did not interrupt. When she was done, I said, I hear all of that, and some of it, the feeling invisible, the loneliness, I have to own that. I could have been more present. I know that. She looked surprised. But, I continued, you chose to take everything and leave while our son was in the hospital, and you did it without a conversation, without giving me a chance to be anything except the man you'd already decided I was. That part, Renee, that part was not okay. She started to cry again, quietly, this time. Not the dramatic airport crying, just quiet tears running down her face. I know, she whispered. The money is gone. I'm not going to spend my remaining years chasing it through courts. But I need you to understand what you did. Not to me, I'll survive, but to yourself, to us, to the story of who we were. I'm so sorry, Gerald. I know you are. We sat in silence for a while. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a dog barked twice, and then went quiet. Then she looked at me with something careful in her eyes. You mentioned another account on the phone. Yes, what did you mean? I told her about Howard. About the building, about the 14 months of quiet management, and the rental income, and the property value. I told her all of it calmly, the way I tell most things. She stared at me. $340,000, she said slowly. Yes, and monthly income of $3,200, yes, Gerald. She put her face in her hands. Gerald, I left all of that. I left you, you left me. I confirmed gently. Yes, Marcus came over that weekend with Keisha and the girls. Simone flew in from Atlanta. She said she wanted to be there, and I was glad. We had a family dinner. The table was full. I made my mother's pot roast recipe, the one with the carrots and the pearl onions that takes all afternoon. Lily and Aver ran around the backyard. The oak tree stood steady in the October light. After dinner, after the girls were settled in front of a movie, the adults sat around the table. Marcus, Keisha, Simone, Renee, me. Marcus spoke first. Mom, he said, not angry, just direct, like his father. I love you, you know that, but I need to say this once and then I'm going to let it go. I was in the hospital, and in that moment you chose to do what you did. I'm going to forgive you because that's what we do, but I need you to understand that what you did to Dad, that's not something a person just walks away from without carrying it. Renee nodded. She didn't try to explain. Simone reached across the table and took her mother's hand. We're not here to punish you, Mom. We're here because we're a family. But things are going to be different now. We see things differently now. Renee looked at me. What do you want, Gerald? She asked, after everything. What do you want? I thought about that question. I had thought about it for 2 months, really. In the hospital waiting room and on the back porch, and in the long quiet of this house that had held 31 years of our life together. I want to spend whatever years I have left in peace, I said. I want to watch my grandchildren grow up. I want to sit on that porch in the evening and not feel like the man who was abandoned. I want to be the man I have always been, except this time. I want people to know that man's value while he's still standing in front of them, not after. The table was quiet. What does that mean for us? Renee asked. For you and me? I don't know yet, I said. I'm 62 years old, and my wife walked out on me while my son was in the emergency room. I think I'm allowed to not know yet. She accepted that, and somehow, in accepting it, she seemed to stand up a little straighter. Like the truth, even when it hurts, gives you something to stand on. I am not going to tell you that Renee and I reconciled, and everything went back to the way it was. Life is not a Hallmark movie. I am 62 years old, and I know better. What I will tell you is what happened. Renee moved back into the house, into the guest room. We agreed that she would stay while she got herself sorted. She got a full-time position back at the pediatric clinic, who were glad to have her. She opened her own bank account with what remained of the $47,000, about $32,000 after Derek's investment, and she told me she intended to pay me back every dollar over time. I told her she didn't have to. She said she needed to, so we agreed. Derek called her twice in the first month. She did not answer. The third time, she picked up and said, very simply, "Don't call me again." And that was that. I continued managing the rental property. I hired a good property manager to handle the day-to-day, and I focused on understanding the finances better. Brother Thomas in Miami gave me introductions to a couple of other property owners who became mentors of sorts. I started thinking about a second property, 62 years old, and I was building something new. Imagine that. Marcus's blood pressure came under control with medication and lifestyle changes. He started walking in the evenings, and sometimes I would join him, just the two of us, in the quiet neighborhood streets, talking about everything and nothing the way fathers and sons do when they finally find the time. Simone came home more often. I think what happened rearranged something in her. reminded her that time is not guaranteed, that the people we take for granted have lives that can shift without warning. She came home for Thanksgiving and Christmas and one random weekend in February, just because she wanted to see the backyard and eat my pot roast. And Renee and I, we were something I didn't have a word for, not married the way we had been, not divorced, not enemies, not quite friends, something human and complicated and honest, which was perhaps more than we had been in years. She would sometimes come and sit on the back porch with me in the evenings. We wouldn't always talk. Sometimes we'd just sit with the tea and watch the oak tree and the fireflies. And I think we were both trying to figure out what to do with all these years and all this history and all this damage. That was also somehow still love. Truth that changed everything about 8 months after that hospital night. I was going through some old boxes in the garage, the kind of project you put off for years, and then suddenly one Saturday you just start doing it. Old mail, old photographs, old documents. I found a box of letters. Letters Renee had written me early in our marriage, before email, before texting, when she would sometimes leave notes or mail things just because. I sat on a step stool in the garage, and I read them. In one letter from 1996, she had written, "Gerald, you are the steadiest person I have ever known. Sometimes I worry that I don't deserve how steady you are. Sometimes I think I will find a way to ruin it the way I ruin most good things, but I am trying not to. I am trying to be worthy of you. Love always, your Renee." I read that letter 3 times. She had known, even 30 years ago, some part of her had seen this coming, her own restlessness, her own self-destruction, and she had written it down in a letter she'd mailed to her husband. I folded that letter carefully, and I put it in my shirt pocket. And then I went inside, and I found Renee in the kitchen making her Sunday gravy, the way she used to every Sunday when the kids were young, and I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her stir the pot. She heard me and turned around. "What?" she said, reading something in my face. I pulled out the letter and put it on the counter. She looked at it. Her face went through several things at once: recognition, then shame, then something much older and sadder than either of those. "You found the old box," she said. "You knew yourself back then." I said, "You saw it in yourself." She pressed her lips together. "I thought love would fix it," she said quietly. "I thought if someone loved me steadily enough for long enough, that part of me would just stop. It wasn't a job for love." I said. "It was a job for you." She nodded slowly. "I know that now," she said. "I know it too late, but I know it." We stood in that kitchen, the Sunday gravy simmering, 31 years and one great rupture and 1,000 smaller ones between us, and neither of us looked away. "What do you want, Gerald?" she asked again, the same question she had asked at the table 8 months ago. And this time I had an answer. "I want us to be honest," I said. "For whatever time we have. I don't know if that means married or something else. But I want us to be real with each other. No more performing, no more pretending, just real." She reached out and took my hand. Her hands were older now. Both of ours were 62 and 59, hands that had washed dishes and changed diapers and signed school permission slips and held each other through funerals and illnesses and ordinary Tuesdays. "I think I can do that," she said. "I think I can too," I said. "I am going to speak directly to you now. Whoever you are, however old you are, wherever you're watching this from, I am Gerald Raymond Hutchins, 62 years old, 37 years walking a mail route, one inheritance that changed my life, one text message that broke my heart, 2 children who turned out to be extraordinary people, a wife who strayed and came back and is, slowly, becoming someone I might fall in love with again in a different, quieter way. And here is what I know. The first thing, staying quiet, is not the same as being weak. People will read your silence as defeat. They will confuse your steadiness for stupidity. They will take your patience as permission to treat you carelessly. Let them take their conclusions, because quiet men who do the work tend to outlast the noise. Every single time, the second thing, what you build in secret, you keep when everything else is taken. Not because you were hiding it out of malice, but because you were careful, because you understood that not every blessing needs to be announced. Not every plan needs to be shared before it is ready. There is wisdom in knowing what to hold close. The third thing, the people who leave thinking you have nothing often leave the most. They carry away only what's visible. They don't know about the quiet property and the rental income and the 37 years of character that can't be transferred to a bank account. They leave thinking they've won, and sometimes they figure out what they actually left. The fourth thing, and this is the most important one, there is no victory in watching someone suffer for what they did to you. When Renee called me from Miami, lost and humiliated and alone, I did not feel triumphant. I felt sad. For her, yes, but also for us, for the couple we had been, and the years we had wasted getting to this terrible, clarifying moment. The goal was never for her to lose. The goal, the real goal of a good life, is to be the person who remains standing when the storm passes. Not because you're hard, not because you're unfeeling, but because you are rooted. Root yourself, friends, in your values, in your work, in your children and the people who truly see you. Root yourself so deep that when the wind comes, and the wind always comes, you bend, but you do not break. My name is Gerald Raymond Hutchins. I walked 37 years of mail routes. I raised 2 good children. I loved a complicated woman, and I lost her for a while, and I may be finding her again in a different form. I inherited a building from a man who believed in my decency. I sat in an emergency room holding my son's hand and received a devastating text and responded with 2 words. Good luck, and somehow, I meant it sincerely. I meant, I hope you find what you're looking for. I meant, I am too old and too tired for hatred. I meant, my hands are open. Life rewards the open hand, friends. It rewards the steady man. It rewards the person who keeps showing up even when no one is watching, even when no one is clapping, even when the text comes through, and the money is gone, and the hospital lights buzz, and the plastic chair is too hard for old bones. Keep showing up. That's the whole lesson. That's all of it. Keep showing up. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of someone you love or a truth you needed to hear today, please subscribe to this channel. Share this with someone who needs to know that quiet strength is the most powerful force in the world. And remember, the man who says good luck and means it is always the one who ends up okay.